Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid and another morning walk and talk on a pretty nice little Monday morning. And it's been a while since I've been able to put one of these out. The plan was to record last Monday. I was going to be out doing a lot of walking, so it's all about multitasking, right? But when the walk is as important as the talk, you are sometimes at the mercy of outside forces. And first it was the weather, because I think you've noticed at the tail end of the last walk and talk how windy it's been here in the last few weeks. And luckily today it seems pretty calm, fingers crossed. So my attempts to record last Monday were killed by the weather. And then I had actually tried, or had an idea to record Monday night. I actually went to a concert Monday night, and I had a pretty big walk from the venue back to the train to get home. And well, when you're 43 years old and you stand right next to the PA system in the front row at a heavy metal concert, your ears kind of go out. And let's just say the audio quality of my speaking voice was not the best leaving that show. But hey, got to get out and do something non-football related every now and then, right? Anyways, what that has done is give us some time for a couple more questions to come in, consolidate things a little bit. And today's questions are basically going to be focused on the defensive side of Badgers, which is something that my channel is evolving into, including more and more. First we started out focusing on kind of quelling the misconceptions of the air raid offense, and has slowly morphed into a channel where it's more football in general from a coach's point of view. So that's what we're going to do today, talking a little bit of defense. And the first question I got, and have had this a couple times so far this year, is a lot of you out there either are losing faith or had no faith to begin with in the defensive staff. And because of that lack of faith, you are having problems trying to see growth or potential, or growth within the potential, with all this kind of things put together, of players on the defense. I think the one obvious one that everyone can see, regardless of what we feel about the defense, is Christian Alliegro, and I would agree. He has been a solid contributor right away as a true freshman, and last year as a true sophomore. Going to be leading the linebacking core this year as a true junior. But I've been asked, who else has shown potential, has shown growth in these last two seasons, and are there players that I have reasons to be optimistic about their continued growth within the system going forward? Well, let's start with some of the players who are no longer in the program, but spent the last 2 years or a year developing and improving as they went. I think obviously Nizer Forkreen is a huge one there. When the offensive game planning switched from targeting the entire Badger defense to only targeting one side and keeping the ball away from Cardinal Hallman, the cornerback on the other side is going to get a lot of work. And Nizer Forkreen stepped up. He played really solid football. And I think there's a very good chance that he's going to find his way onto an NFL roster this upcoming offseason. Growing from a D2 player to a solid starter in the Big Ten, and especially going after last season where He basically couldn't work out last offseason due to an injury that he was recovering from and surgery he was recovering from. To grow to where he was at the end of the season, I think shows a lot. And it's a shame that we're losing him, but I'm really looking forward to seeing him on the next level. I'd say the same thing about Elijah Hills. I mean, we heard when he came in spring ball, he was buried in the depth chart behind other players who, as the season went on, their true skills showed, and so did Elijah Hills. He really grew as the season went on, and by the end, he was the most dependable playmaker on the defensive line, on a defensive line that lacked playmakers. So, beyond that, I know it's hard, but sometimes you have to look beyond stats to see growth and to see potential. I think Preston Zachman, when he was given more opportunities to play, he was a solid player. Is he going to be a world beater out there at the strong safety? Is he going to take over for Hunter Wohler in that role this year? I don't think so. But he's reliable. You know what he's going to give you as a player. And I think this season he's going to continue to grow. You could say the same thing about Austin Brown. They wanted him to get into that role, to the rotation at the safety spot. But when the Max Lofi experiment at nickelback didn't quite work out, he played pretty admirably down in the box. He's a solid tackler. And for a player whose role has changed significantly in the last 2 years, I think he's played pretty solid. And I think he's going to hold down that nickelback spot again this year and grow even more. And now when I think the defensive staff is going to go into the season with a player like him in mind for that position, they're going to be able to scheme around him and to get him more involved. And I'm expecting to see him also involved in the pass rush this year with more blitzing opportunities. So there's a couple examples in the defensive backfield. D-line, obviously, Dillan Johnson, true freshman, undersized true freshman. He was 270 soaking wet. And by the end of the season, he was our solid second best defensive lineman in terms of playmaking ability. You could see the raw strength. You could see the raw playmaking ability. I think another year in the strength and conditioning program, adding some more weight. I expect his weight to be significantly higher this season, and in a role that will probably fit his playmaking abilities better, as we'll talk about later with how I expect to see the defensive system change a bit this year. He's another player that I think is going to continue to grow. He fits that mold that Luke Fickell is looking for in his defensive players, the wrestling background, and you can see that with his use of leverage and his use of how his body, his frame is built. He was able to hold his ground, and I think he's going to be a solid one there, and he's going to be in the rotation for sure. And last one I'll mention, only because I think for a lot of us 2 years ago, he was a complete afterthought, and that's Aaron Witt. Aaron Witt, coming into this season, is our most consistent outside linebacker. He's a solid edge-setting, run-stopping outside linebacker. And for a player who has dealt with so many injuries and off-the-field issues in terms of family health, etc., to keep plugging and to keep getting better and to grow through the season and solidifying his role as the year went on, I think he was a solid player. I think he's going to still be in that rotation at outside linebacker. I think he's going to be an early down run stopper. I think you're going to see him on goal line sets. And he's a player that we as Badger fans should be proud that has stuck it out and have carved out a role for him And you know the coaching staff loves him and wants to do everything they can to help him play on the field. So continuing talking about the defense, and this question, I have gotten a lot of different variations of the question. Now that we have seen all the transfer portal additions, subtractions, where do I see the defensive system moving in 2025? So this is a tough question to answer, because there is what I would do with the changes in personnel and what the coaching staff feels fits the players they have and the offenses that they're going to face this coming season. So I will try to be as general with this as I can, so I'm not completely wrong when they get to spring ball. I think we could, first thing, let's start with what I don't think they're going to do. And that is, I don't think they're moving towards a 4-2 defense with a 4-3 base as a base front in 12 personnel, etc. For the simple fact that the outside linebackers who were recruited last season, were recruited as 2-4, 3-4 outside linebackers, as Wisconsin outside linebackers have been recruited for the past decade. And I don't think the depth is there in terms of bodies and numbers to convert inside linebackers to stand up outside linebackers. I don't think the body types are necessarily right with a lot of the players in the outside linebacker core to move out to an off the ball outside linebacker. So I think, and if you just say, see, you're straight up going to convert all those guys into edge rushers, you're going to run into problems in base personnel downs. And you're retraining an entire group of players how to do something different. So I don't think that's where they're going to go. Like I said in my last video, we're talking about the defensive line. What we have seen in terms of the players that they've added in the portal, both at interior defensive line and edge rusher / outside linebacker, is we're seeing a lot of diversity in skill sets and body types. Skill sets and body types that we did not have previous. One of the major issues I have with the crowd of people who are against the 2-4 defense that we ran in nickel situations the past 2 years is a big reason why that was what we did, was because that was the makeup of the defense we had. Because again, like I said, we've been recruiting those type of players for a decade. You know, what we did last year and the last 2 years is nothing new. It's very similar to what we've been doing since Dave Aranda. So you had a rather narrow body type, playing style to choose from amongst the players to build a system around. Now you are adding, for me, so to then talk about what we have then. You know, we have interior nose tackles, 2-eye techniques, plays either on a center, but those guys are undersized, so usually we be the type of guys who play off the inside shoulder or the guard. We have those types, and then we have 3 techs, outside shade of the guard, more interior edge setter types, in interior gap holders, holding on double teams between the tackle and the guard. Those are the 2 types of defensive linemen we had. For all the years that we ran 3-4, we didn't really recruit very many 3-4 defensive ends. Long, strong guys who could play a 4, a 4I, or a 5, who could hold a B or a C gap. We didn't really recruit many of those guys. We have A and B gap players. So when you look at the guys that they've brought in, I see guys who fit so many different roles. You know, Parker Peterson, he is your nose tackle. He is going to play straight down the center, and he's going to control A gap. You've got Charles Perkins, who the more and more I watch that guy's film, the more and more I love his game. He is your 3-tech / 4I. Could play over inside the guard or outside the guard, inside the tackle, with an outside linebacker behind him or next to him, or you could put him on the boundary, line him up as a 5-tech. You know, he's got enough pass rushing ability. More importantly, he can hold that edge type of guy out there. You've got true 5-tech defensive ends, so a little bit thicker, a little bit longer type guys like Corey Walker. I think Mason Reiger can play both as an outside linebacker and as a defensive end. So when you're getting players who fit these different body types and responsibilities, that gives you more flexibility. So defensively, I think they are going to be in more of a multiple defense this year. And I think the multiple is going to be based around a 3-man front. And it is going to be based around different 3- and 4-man surfaces created by these different personnel groups. So what we could be seeing, what I call a 3-3 over front, which would be you bring an outside linebacker on the field side up on the edge. You have the defensive end slide in as a 3-tech or a 4I. You bump the nose over and you bump the backside defensive end to a 5 to hold the boundary. To me, that's an over. We could take that, and so then the outside linebacker on that side is more of the edge setter, run stopper. Or in turn, you can flip it, and you could put your big run stopping edge setter defensive end types to the field, flip the D line, and we could put the pass rushing outside linebacker to the boundary, let him take off after the quarterback. Or I think we're going to see the tight front, which means we're going to have a straight nose, 2 4-eyes, so guys who are inside shade of the tackles, and either play 3 linebackers with 1 down the middle and 2 outside backers, or you could play it with a nickel, like a dollar personnel. And what I really like about the tight front is it gives you both a 7-man box and dropping 8 in coverage. It's a really nice system when it comes to kind of capturing what the offense is doing, and it gives you a lot of great potential for pass rush from the second level. So all in all, without getting too much in the weeds and too nerdy, without having playbook in front of me, I expect our defense to be a lot more versatile this year and a lot more, giving us a lot more options. I think we're going to see 3 down, something we haven't been able to do based on the personnel that was here. The effort was made to bring in more bodies to fill more spots in the depth chart so we can run a 3-man line. I mean, by the end of the season, we were rotating 3 guys through 2 spots. That's how bad the upperclassmen were last season, that we couldn't rely on a lot of those guys. So it is what it is. So I think this season we are going to see a lot more diversity, which I'm hoping is going to lead to more second-level blitzing opportunities, third-level blitzing opportunities with creeper blitzes and with simulated pressure fronts, getting a lot more versatile. I don't think we were able to do that over the last 2 years because, first, I just don't think intangibly wise a lot of the players that we had could do that. I think they were used to being quite static. And the last couple of years, we haven't played as many offenses that were stupid enough to leave the A gap completely free 3 plays in a row like USC did back in the day to create pressure situations. We actually have to scheme up pressure, and that's something that we definitely have to do this coming season. In addition to that, do I think we are going to be looking at adding any more targets in the portal defensively? I think we're pretty much done going into spring ball. Got a couple corners, and we're going to give an opportunity for the young guys to get some reps. We can still add players in the portal. I know there are still corners out there, so there is a possibility, but I think they're going to go into spring ball pretty much set where they are now. Defensive line, they were looking at a couple guys late. The Ohio defensive end who ended up going to Rutgers was a big target, and people were actually saying that his commitment was imminent before he committed to Rutgers. So they might be looking for a defensive lineman, but that defensive lineman room has grown substantially this offseason, not only with all the transfers, but with the 3 high school recruits that we brought in. So I don't think we're going to get any more there. Linebacker, I think we're pretty set. And offense, I think we're pretty set with what they want to do going into spring. So no, I don't think we're going to see any more additions until after the spring portal window opens, if there is a spring portal window, that is. And finally, got to talk about it, right? Got to talk about the latest in the Xavier Lucas situation. And part of me is happy that at least we're coming to some conclusion. I'm happy that UW held its ground and stuck by its position. And it's going to be a lose-lose situation at the end. So to bring everybody up to speed, again, if you have been under the rock, that was under the rock we talked about last time we talked about Xavier Lucas. Xavier Lucas tried to enter the portal. He was denied entry by UW. UW has since released a statement saying that they had entered into a 2-year contract with Xavier that included NIL and revenue sharing pending the approval of the House Committee. But what is a templated contract given to Wisconsin from the Big Ten. So I think it's a pretty binding contract from what we can tell from the outside. And UW is accusing Miami of tampering. And at least the good thing that's going to come out of this is hopefully this is going to inspire some of these schools and coaches who have been saying that coaches have been and schools have been tampering with their players to come out and name names. UW named names. Miami, they tampered with Xavier Lucas. Like you hear Jim Mora Jr. saying, "Oh, I know coaches were tampering with our players." Prove it. What's their names? Who did it? Tell me who it was. UW did that. Now, Xavier Lucas's attorney, Lionel Hutz, Darren Heitner, is saying that they didn't receive any money and that NIL contracts are binding, but they're not binding, meaning Xavier can, since the NIL contracts are with the collective and not the university can't hold him. But UW is saying that revenue sharing is a part of the contract, which does tie him to the university, and therefore UW expects that contract is honored. It's fine. Xavier Lucas is going to go to Miami. He bypassed the portal because apparently the portal doesn't exist, and I knew this was going to happen, where the NCAA has haphazardly and quickly put out these rules and regulations for the transfer portal and NIL and stuff like that, and it is super easy to find loopholes. Now, the way that I hear it, and I could be wrong, is yes, Xavier Lucas, like any college student, is allowed to withdraw from one university, and as long as he is academically eligible, is eligible to go to another university. I have no problem with that. If he wants to sign out of the University of Wisconsin and enroll in Miami, all the power to him. I'm sure his degree in hotel management is going to serve him well down the road. No problem with that. But, in my opinion, that's where it ends. If he wants to go to school at Miami, go ahead. But he signed a contract that included playing football at the University of Wisconsin. And this contract was signed based on the information we have, knowing that the revenue sharing is not official, but it will be soon. And it is made between him and the university. And in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, the university did not violate the terms of his contract because they haven't been able to fulfill it yet. It is pending, but it's still a binding contract. So, if Xavier wants to go to Miami, and Darren Heitner, is going to find a way for him to play football, and I think at the end of the day, UW is going to let him play, and UW is going to collect his NIL revenue because he signed a contract with UW. He is going to collect, or UW is going to collect, Xavier Lucas's revenue sharing from Miami because UW signed a contract, so did Xavier. So Xavier Lucas wants to go and get an education at the University of Miami and play football, as I guess how scholarships players did it 3 years ago before NIL. All the power to him. I have no problem with that. He's not going to play another down for the University of Wisconsin. Nobody's going to force him to. And that's it. But contracts. And at the end of the day, Xavier Lucas is a kid in a lot of our eyes. But for the law, he's an adult. And whether his mom coerced him into making decisions, whether he made decisions based on the health of his father, I don't know. Do not care. Contracts are made. Somebody has to honor them. And is this going to hurt UW's reputation? I think was it Jesse Temple said it best on a recent episode of The Camp. It would insult our intelligence to think that this one situation is going to completely ruin UW's chances at recruiting in South Florida. I know Brian Smith is really going off about, it's really going to hurt the Badgers in South Florida. He's saying that to protect his own reputation in South Florida. If he starts bad-mouthing players and schools in South Florida, well, his income is gone. So, of course, he's going to stick up for them, and as he should. But, yeah, American Heritage probably won't send kids to Wisconsin anytime soon. I don't care. It's funny, as soon as, the latest of this Xavier Lucas thing was coming down, we signed a transfer cornerback out of Miami. We're recruiting players in Florida. Paul Haynes is down in Florida right now, or was last week anyways. So one small part of a state, starting at one school, maybe branching out. Okay, fair enough. This is why UW needs to be a national program. Find kids in Texas, find kids in the DMV area, get more kids from Ohio, and keep expanding into areas that are under-recruited, like New Mexico, like other western states, getting back into Pennsylvania, getting into Tennessee like they've been doing. Keep the recruiting base up. And if they do that, losing a couple high schools in South Florida to recruit from at the end of the day is not going to be that big of a deal. So it's a saga that's not going to go away. It's a lose-lose situation for UW, but it's a situation that they needed to hold their ground on and accept the outcome to play the long game. And that's how it is. All right. I think we're going to call it a day here for this particular video. We're in kind of the slow period of the off season. Transfer portal's over. Not much to talk about with recruiting. Coaching staff is set. I think we'll talk more about the coaching staff once they actually talk publicly. I know Jeff Grimes just did an interview with Badger Extra, which instead of me summarizing it, I encourage you guys to go read yourselves. But when we hear more about the staff and maybe get better insights of what the system's going to be like, we'll start talking more. But if you've got any questions, comments, video suggestions, put them in the Google form mailbag, and I will make a video on them if I feel I can make some good content out of it. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.